Listen, nature, isn't it wonderful? You know, Mother Earth, she's all we have. Over 6 billion of us occupy possibly the only planet in the universe that sustains life, but yet we take everything from her, we give very little back. Is she getting mad at us? Are killer tsunamis, quakes, and tornadoes the Earth's way of saying enough is enough? Maybe. But there's something else going on with our planet, freaks of nature that are impossible to explain and can strike you out of the blue. Sunday, April 2nd, 1978. 12-year-old Darren Bickford was making his way home on Bell Island, a small community in Newfoundland, on the east coast of Canada.
I was outside riding my pedal bike, and I knew one of my favorite shows came on television at 11, so I was pedaling back home. As I approached the end of our driveway, all the birds stopped chirping, all the dogs stopped barking. It just went so still. The ground shook underneath me. It was the biggest noise I have ever heard in my life.
Suddenly, something unbelievable appears right in front of Darren. A glowing ball of light.
It was hovering off the ground when it appeared out of thin air, and the beautiful colors of blue made up most of the center of the ball. And outside of the blue, it was orange and yellow mixing together. And then just like that, the ball of light just disappeared into thin air. This is without a doubt the strangest, most terrifying thing I've ever seen. But I was terrified, but I was transfixed by it. It was so beautiful looking, this ball of light and the colors and the way it swirled around. You couldn't help but stare at it. Even though I was scared, I was shaken, but I loved it, and I've never seen anything like it. And I guess I will probably never see nothing like it again in my life. It was all over in 4 or 5 seconds. But those 4 or 5 seconds are burnt into my brain just like a roll of film.
The massive explosion was heard over 60 kilometers away. Its impact wreaked havoc. People reported exploding TV sets, blue flames shooting from electrical outlets, and a strange beam of light coming from the sky. This bizarre event was dubbed the Bell Island Boom.
After this happened, everyone was in bewilderment.
One house seemed to catch the brunt of the boom. It belonged to Darren's grandfather, James Bickford.
Fuses in his fuse panel were glass fuses that were screwed into the panel. These had come out like bullets and went about 20-odd feet the length of their hallway and buried themselves in the wall.
Grandpa's chicken coop is demolished. The chickens inside, killed instantly.
It really looked like the bomb had gone off in his shed.
It's a bizarre scene. But even more baffling are 3 large holes blown into the ground.
There was a cone-shaped hole going 3 or 4 feet down. We didn't know what it was.
This weird and mysterious incident soon generates massive interest around the world.
A lot of people came, the media came. The television news crew had me describe to them what I had seen.
Myself, I thought there was something happened to the world, or someone dropping bombs or something.
Now, this is really weird, or what? Little kid is riding his bike, minding his own business, when boom, his town was suddenly smashed by some mysterious explosion, turning fuses into lethal weapons, exploding TV. And what about those poor chickens? Awful. What could have caused something like that? Was that me? Jim Farrell was a local fire investigator and one of the first to the scene. After being asked to investigate, he sends his report to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The RCMP officially concludes that it was lightning.
I've never encountered anything so great as this force.
But Jim isn't the only one who wants answers. Soon, Darren gets a surprise visit.
There were these strange men. I was told They were scientists from Los Alamos, New Mexico.
The Los Alamos National Laboratory built and tested the first atomic bombs. Could there be a connection? The men interview everyone involved, including Darren and Jim.
I told him everything I knew, and next thing, I was more or less ordered to turn over my exhibits to the gentleman.
33 years later, and I would still like to know to this day, what was the ball of light that I saw? If it was lightning, how did it remain stationary and motionless in the air? How did it appear out of thin air and then disappear into thin air? Those things aren't supposed to happen. But they do happen. I saw it happen.
The three strangers leave without giving any concrete answers. What were they looking for? What did Darren Bickford and the residents of Bell Island witness? And what could have created the Bell Island boom? Science journalist Brian Dunning believes the answer isn't so earth-shattering after all.
There's actually about 600 booms starting in late 1977 going through mid-1978. Nobody could really localize exactly what was happening, but it was heard from South Carolina all the way up through Canada.
Could the Bell Island boom be part of a bigger phenomenon? What could be responsible for this rash of strange booms?
As so often happens when you have a mystery, all kinds of people started coming up with crazy explanations for what these might be. And the most common one was people thought it was some kind of a military test of a new super weapon, something like maybe that Nikola Tesla might have envisioned. Tesla, when he was in his later years and was getting kind of crazy, he was coming up with all kinds of proposals for ideas. He never built them or anything, but one of his ideas was a giant atmospheric superweapon that would move a large chunk of the atmosphere over a city and destroy it. And some people were saying that this might be a test, an actual test. Maybe someone actually built this weapon and we're trying it out. We don't know any superweapons that are consistent with what happened at Bell Island. It's purely conjecture. It's purely just a hypothesis that you make up. There's no evidence supporting that. Maybe it is the explanation, but we don't have any reason to think so. What started happening in December of 1977 is that the Concorde was flying over. It was making its supersonic flights between New York and Europe, and that created sonic booms coming over the land.
When planes fly through the air, they make waves, just like a boat in the water. The faster you fly, the closer the waves build up at the tip of the airplane. And when a plane actually goes faster than the sound waves can move, they pile up into one big sonic shock wave that can cause damage to the areas on land below it. Could the Bell Island boom just have been the effect of a sonic boom in the world's first supersonic passenger jet?
Because it was a sonic aircraft and made a big sonic boom, it was supposed to go way out to sea. However, on hot days, because of fuel expansion issues, it would have to take a shortcut route and it would go over Nova Scotia. For all the 600 mystery booms that we heard, most of them were correlated with sonic booms from the Concorde and other aircraft.
Could the world's fastest passenger jet have caused the tumult on Bell Island? A small Newfoundland community is thrown into chaos by an earth-shattering boom. Was it caused by a supersonic airliner? Carl Stefan is a professor of engineering. His theory is very electric.
What I've read of the Bell Island boom sounds consistent with a super lightning bolt.
Super lightning bolts are extremely rare, but freakishly powerful bolts of lightning.
Most lightning has a negative charge. However, about 10% or less of lightning bolts are positively charged. Positive lightning also tends to travel farther. It can go several miles from cloud to cloud, for example. So the eyewitness reports of the Bell Island boom that said the sound was heard for many miles around, that's consistent with a long positive lightning bolt that, you know, was going through several clouds in several miles distant.
Superbolts almost always occur in the upper atmosphere over oceans. Very rarely do they hit land. But do they explain the weird things seen that day on Bell Island? Like glass fuses acting like bullets.
Strange things happen when very large currents flow through wires that aren't designed to carry them. Tremendous forces are set up, magnetic forces that can cause ordinary objects to fly like projectiles.
Okay, but what about the poor chickens that were roasted in their coop?
Chickens are susceptible to being electrocuted. What can happen with any kind of animal that are in a place where lightning hits the ground is the current running along the ground can actually run up through the legs and through the body and kill the animal.
Stefan's superbolt theory seems to help answer some of the mysterious incidents on Bell Island. But does it explain the weird glowing ball of light witnessed by Darren Bickford? Stefan believes the answer lies in an incredibly rare natural phenomenon.
The ball of light hovering sounds a whole lot like ball lightning. Ball lightning is sometimes seen to form right after a lightning strike. We suspect that it is an electrical phenomenon. It may be something that science doesn't know about yet.
Did lightning make fuses explode and act like bullets? Did it roast those chickens? Questions persist. If scientists don't even know what ball lightning is, how can they think that that's what Darren saw? If it was a superbolt, why did high-level personnel from a top-secret lab show up to investigate? And finally, what caused the 3 craters at James Bickford's place? Lee Tizard is an electromagnetic weapons researcher. He thinks Mother Nature shouldn't take the rap for this one.
I believe the evidence indicates that it was caused by something man-made and not something by nature. It was an accident.
But what could cause an accident on this scale? What kind of accident blows holes in islands?
During that time frame, the Russians were pounding North America with a very powerful and disruptive signal called the woodpecker signal.
The woodpecker signal was a radio signal used by the Soviets in the 1970s to provide early warning of an enemy weapons launch. By bouncing radio waves off the Earth's upper atmosphere, the ionosphere, they could analyze the returning waves for disruptions indicating a missile attack.
It was so disruptive that the UN and a number of countries banded together with the UN and protested to the Soviet Union when they found out that it was originating from Gomel in the Soviet Union, and they protested and demanded it be stopped, but it really didn't stop for a long time. I think it stopped in like the mid-'80s, but it went on for at least 10 years, the mid-'70s to the mid-'80s.
According to Tizard, the woodpecker signal was a ticking time bomb. He believes its use accidentally created a column of electromagnetic energy known as a standing columnar wave over North America. Despite being invisible to the eye, this huge energy field had the potential to be disastrous.
I believe that the standing columnar wave that was established collapsed. And when the standing columnar wave collapses, it creates these vortices of electromagnetic energy that have to dissipate. It sent down 3 spinning vortices of electromagnetic energy, and that's what we believe struck, explaining the 3 holes. It's believed that the standing columnar wave that was created by the woodpecker signal was attracted to Bell Island because of the iron ore content. It was a former iron ore mine.
Did the iron-rich Bell Island act as a giant magnet for a massive burst of electromagnetic energy caused by the Soviets? Or was it struck by a superbolt with a side dish of ball lightning? Whatever the truth, Darren Bickford and the other survivors of the Bell Island boom may never know. Weird. Or what? A mysterious, deadly fog haunts Lake Michigan, swallowing ships and planes and bending time. Is this a true freak of nature? Is it weird? Or what?
In 3 meters, turn right.
You know, modern technology is amazing, isn't it?
Turn right.
I mean, with nothing but this tiny gadget, I can navigate to within an inch of wherever I want to go. Look.
Prepare to turn left. Turn left. Go straight ahead.
It even talks to you. What a nice lady. And it's so accurate.
Turn right.
Yeah.
Turn right. Turn right.
Can't turn right, you stupid thing. There's a wall here.
Go straight ahead.
Ah.
Go straight ahead. Calculating route.
Have you ever felt yourself disoriented, like you're lost in the woods?
Calculating route.
Well, I am.
Go straight ahead.
No!
Calculate.
It's not a pleasant experience, I can assure you. The Great Lakes of North America hold a fifth of the world's fresh water. They're also one of the most popular areas for sailing in the world. But on a summer night, nearly 2 decades ago, Kathy Dorr discovered these gentle waters aren't quite what they seem.
The events of that night challenged my conventional view of reality.
It's a warm July evening when Kathy sets off for a leisurely sail.
Clear sky, light chop. It was beautiful out, and it was hot.
Just around nightfall, her calm journey is upended by something mysterious and alarming.
Very abruptly, we encountered fog, a very strange fog. It just descended on us. Poof, just like that. At that point, I became very, very, very cold. In fact, I was freezing.
Blinded and cold, Kathy and her yacht have seemingly disappeared into a void.
The boat began a strange aquatic dance. It began to turn, almost as if it were pirouetting on its axis. There was no movement of the sea. This was not a whirlpool. I looked at the captain and I said, "Who's steering the vessel?" And he said, "Nobody, it's steering itself."
Amazingly, the vessel does 3 complete 360-degree turns. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the fog suddenly vanishes. They regain control of the boat and head for home. But when Kathy looks at her watch, she makes a startling discovery.
I've gone over this 100 times. We should have been back by 10 p.m., and it was after midnight. We cannot count for 2 hours. I don't know what happened to that time.
Kathy's pleasure cruise had somehow become a nightmare.
I just remember thinking, this is the most extraordinary thing I have ever witnessed.
What happened to Kathy and her yacht? Remarkably, her experience isn't the only weird event to occur on Lake Michigan. Numerous unexplained mysteries have occurred here. Passenger airplanes vanishing without a trace. Legends of ghost ships appearing out of nowhere. And thousands of UFO sightings. Could the mysterious fog Kathy encountered be linked to these strange events? Was it a natural phenomenon or something unknown? Pilot Bruce Gernon believes he has the answer.
When I first heard Kathy's story, I immediately realized that she had experienced what I call electronic fog.
Bruce believes that sometimes different magnetic fields from the Earth collide in powerful freak thunderstorms over remote bodies of water, such as Lake Michigan. The result is a metallic, highly charged fog.
It's been known to actually chase vessels and try to capture them. And once it captures them, it clings to them, and the people become disoriented because it doesn't make sense to them. No one has ever realized that it's attached to them. Everyone always thinks that they're moving inside this fog. They don't realize that the fog is moving with them.
Once formed, The electronic fog is magnetically attracted to metal objects like ships and airplanes, wreaking havoc on their navigational controls and displaying other incredible properties.
NASA has just recently announced that they have discovered something new in certain types of thunderstorms. And it appears at the top of the storm, emitting antimatter.
Created by massive lightning within a storm, antimatter produces 10,000 times more power than nuclear energy. Some scientists speculate that this sort of power could open doors to new dimensions of time and space.
And this is a critical discovery that relates to the electronic fog.
Could a mystery fog have sucked Kathy Dorr forward in time? Do we need to rewrite our science books?
This is a very real phenomenon.
A woman and her yacht suddenly disappear while sailing on Lake Michigan. Were they taken by a freak of nature known as electronic fog? Dr. Don Adrian Rice doesn't think so.
Human beings are not always reliable witnesses to our own experiences.
For him, the explanation is far more straightforward.
I think what the person was experiencing was sensory deprivation. Typically, they began to either hallucinate visually, they could have auditory hallucinations, or they could have kinesthetic hallucinations with the body.
Could a regular fog cause Kathy Dorr to hallucinate and mistake an ordinary event for something fantastical? Maybe. But how could it explain those 2 missing hours?
You're having a great time at a party or someplace, time seems to go by very quickly. If you are sitting in a meeting, time goes very slowly. And of course, objectively, the clocks are moving exactly the same, but that's not your experience of it.
Dr. Rice is so convinced that sensory deprivation is the culprit, he's offered to recreate the weird events of an electronic fog in his lab.
The experiment itself is one where an individual is deprived of visual information by having goggles with ping pong balls cut out, placed over the eyes, which lets in a little light. But otherwise, the person is deprived. And at the same time, we'll have them listen to white noise sound.
The participants are not told how long their senses will be deprived.
Tell me a little bit about what you experienced.
I've seen sort of outlines of things, almost like looking at clouds and you see shapes in them a little bit. Sort of like the outline of an eye or a mask sometimes. Maybe that sort of shape of a house.
A sensation almost as though I was sinking down a little bit.
I've started feeling a little bit uneasy and a bit nauseous as it felt like things were moving around a little bit.
Dr. Rice has proved that depriving the senses affects perception. But did they also lose track of time?
I was thinking about 5 minutes. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was actually 2 minutes.
I was thinking probably somewhere between 5 and 10, like closer to 10. It didn't feel like very long. Maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes.
Incredibly, the experiment lasted for 20 minutes.
I think the most interesting thing for all 3 was the time distortion, because this lasted for 20 minutes, and they experienced it from 5 to 10 minutes. So again, that's consistent with the experience that the person had in the fog, or others who have been in these kinds of situations where they experienced time distortion. So in this short experiment here, if that were to be generalized to a larger situation, a person may experience themselves as losing even more hours. So that would be very possible. But what you can actually see here is how our brain works and how our brain tries to make sense out of a situation where the senses are deprived.
American author David Childress disagrees these strange occurrences are simply tricks of the mind. For Childress, the answer lies in ley lines. a matrix of magnetic pathways crisscrossing the Earth, connected by ancient ceremonial sites. He believes they can create vortexes of energy and manifest as the paranormal fog.
Other people call these ley lines different things. The ancient Chinese call them dragon lines. We might call them earth currents, or in Australia, the Aboriginals there call them dreaming tracks. The Earth itself is like a giant magnet. And it has a North Pole and a South Pole of magnetic energy. And that energy is created by the rotating, swirling magma inside the Earth. It too is magnetic. And with this ball, that's the planet Earth, with the magnetic lines running all through it, it has its own special energy. And it's where these magnetic lines cross and come together in certain powerful areas, geometrically scattered around our planet, that these vortex, hyperspace spots occur. And it's my view that these vortexes of energy occasionally are activated and become alive and become portals or doorways to other time-space dimensions. And this is what people get caught up in the Bermuda Triangle or in the Great Lakes Triangle.
Does this solve the mystery? Did Kathy Dorr sail into a patch of fog or into another dimension? Was she merely hallucinating as a result of sensory deprivation, or had she entered a time vortex created by ley lines? Whatever the answer, it's most definitely weird or what. A blinding double flash of light is detected over the Indian Ocean. Did it nearly cause World War III?
Everybody knew for sure this was something to be very concerned about.
When it comes to the mysteries of Mother Nature, there's a lot of things that aren't quite as they seem. It's all a matter of perspective. On one hand, it could look perfectly normal. On another, it could look like the end of the world. That's exactly what happened in 1979. Jeffrey Richardson is a U.S. security analyst. He knows lots of secrets, but he's yet to solve one of the biggest, the truth behind a mysterious event known as the Vela incident.
It's a fascinating anomaly. It's a mystery that reads like a techno-thriller.
The tiny Crozet Islands lie in the Indian Ocean, over 1,000 miles south of Africa. Around 3 a.m. on September 22nd, 1979, something extraordinary happened. Without warning, two giant, blinding flashes of light lit up the sky.
Everybody knew for sure this was something to be very concerned about.
Incredibly, 70,000 miles away, the flashes were also detected by a U.S. satellite called Vela 6911.
That triggered a very high level of alert, and from there, word went to the White House that something might have happened. They started calling in advisors.
They took it very seriously. Russian CIA agents to the area in military planes. But what triggered this extreme response?
In 1979, the United States had concluded a series of arms control treaties with the Soviet Union.
The Cold War rivals had just agreed to stop nuclear tests. But the flash detected by Vela 6911 could mean the Soviets were just playing games.
The Vela satellites' prime purpose was to detect nuclear detonations. What they saw was something that's very indicative of a nuclear explosion.
Had the Soviets broken faith? Had they really violated the new treaty and set off a nuclear bomb? Each side had thousands of nuclear warheads pointed at the other. The stakes couldn't be higher.
At first, the administration tried to keep wraps on the story, and it was full-court press of intelligence activities to try to determine what was actually going on.
With a potential global crisis on its hands, the U.S. tries to confirm its suspicions by sending CIA sniffer planes to the Indian Ocean. Equipped with sensitive radiation detectors, they get an unsettling surprise.
There was no radiation detected. It was a mystery. They even sent people, CIA officers, into West Africa to get the leaves off trees to see if there was a residue from a nuclear explosion.
So what had Vela really seen?
They didn't know what actually happened. It's been such a mystery for so many years. In terms of strange events, I think it's, at the top of the list.
What happened over the Indian Ocean? What could cause a giant flash of light so powerful it could be seen 70,000 miles away? Tom Reed is an expert in nuclear weapons.
I've fired them, I built them, I've seen them go off.
He believes there is only one explanation.
I believe it was a nuclear test. A nuclear detonation is kind of hard to hide. I mean, it's not some pin drop in the night. It's a very major event.
But if no one witnessed the explosion, how can he be sure that Vela detected a nuclear blast?
A nuclear explosion has this sort of fingerprint. It is unmistakable.
This fingerprint is caused by the way a nuclear bomb explodes. First, it blasts out deadly gamma radiation at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second.
Technically, it's a flash, but to the human eye, it's this ball of fire and the sun has come to Earth.
Then, as the explosion grows, the shock wave produces a second flash.
It's very mind-boggling. And it's very frightening.
Does the data from Vela confirm the signature double flash of a nuclear bomb? The recorded flashes are shown as curves on a graph.
These curves, those are like fingerprints. This first peak is the device going off. As the bubble expands, the energy releases again, and so you get this second rise.
But if Vela really saw a nuclear blast, where was the other fingerprint? The radioactivity.
They decided to put it in a part of the world where it's mostly water. We then pick a weather condition like typhoon. A really serious typhoon would wash all the radioactive debris right back into the ocean. The best solution to pollution is dilution.
Incredibly, weather records confirm a typhoon was in the area just before the flash. But who would take such elaborate precautions to conceal a nuclear test?
People don't develop nuclear weapons just because it's Thursday. There has to be some reason. Every nation that has gone nuclear has gone in response to a very clear and present threat.
Did some nation have a reason to feel threatened in 1979? Reed believes the answer is obvious.
Israel has very clear and present dangers on its borders. The Israelis have technology, they know weapons, but they didn't have uranium.
Israel could only make the bomb if it had a supplier. But who else was threatened enough to upend the test-banned apple cart?
At the same time,
the Soviets were pouring troops into Africa. South Africans mine uranium as a byproduct of gold. They got so much of it, they don't know what to do with it.
With Soviet forces in nearby Angola, did South Africa have reason to partner with Israel and build a nuclear bomb? Does this explain why a flash occurred in the remote regions of the Indian Ocean?
It is quite clear to me that this was a test by the Israelis with logistical support by the South Africans.
Why is it that whenever someone sees something weird, they always assume the worst? I mean, honestly, is the world so paranoid? Are we really looking at a massive Cold War cover-up? Was the Vela incident nothing more than a crazy conspiracy theory? Or is there another way to solve this mystery? Giant flash of light over the Indian Ocean puts the world on nuclear alert. Was it a freak of nature or something more sinister? Professor Richard Muller is a physicist. U.S. President Jimmy Carter appointed him to investigate the Vela incident.
It was an important international issue with diplomatic consequences, and they needed good scientific review of the data.
Muller has analyzed the same information as the nuclear experts, but he's come to an entirely different conclusion.
When we began our study, we were all convinced this really looks like it was a nuclear explosion. Next step, though, is to check ourselves. We're all scientists who have discovered things. You know, the process of discovery consists of coming up with an idea, with a hypothesis, and then really checking and double-checking yourself in every possible way. So we had a long list of questions that we wanted to have investigated. Next step was to have these teams look at these questions, get back answers to us. But after that first day, I was pretty convinced this was a nuclear bomb. But when we did a scientific review of the data, there was something new and different.
They discovered that Vela had connected its data with two light sensors called bang meters.
The bang meter was a relatively simple device designed to detect flashes of light. It's spelled B-H-A-N-G. It's actually named after a drug, using an Indian term, a drug that if you take it, gives you hallucinations, has you see flashes of light. So someone with a sense of humor named these bang meters.
But remarkable, the double flash recorded by each of the two bang meters was different.
The two pulses from the two bang meters didn't match each other. That was a real mystery, but it indicated that this thing just didn't look right.
The experts are mystified until Muller has a flash of insight. What if it wasn't anything on Earth at all?
The Vela satellite is at a medium Earth orbit. It's far away in space.
70,000 miles above the planet, Vela wasn't protected by Earth's atmosphere. It was bombarded by tiny bits of rock and metal called micrometeorites.
These micrometeorites don't reach the ground because the atmosphere slows them down and absorbs their energy. A satellite such as the Vela satellite is frequently hit by micrometeorites.
But even if micrometeorites smacked into Vela, how could specks of space dust replicate the massive double hump shockwave of a nuclear explosion?
If a micrometeorite hits the surface of the satellite, it knocks off dust. Dust reflects sunlight differently into the two bang meters. This could be the signal.
Is it possible the whole world was freaked out by a fleck of space dust knocked loose by a microscopic space pebble? After running more tests, Muller and his team finally reached a conclusion.
What we thought was a bright flash thousands of miles away was actually just a dim flash that's only a few inches away. Vela never recorded a secret nuclear test. It was micrometeorites. That's almost certainly what we saw back on September 22nd, 1979.
Could this whole mystery be solved by something as simple as space dust? After all, no one actually ever saw the flash. Muller's theory became the official explanation of the U.S. government. But not everyone is convinced.
Clearly, to me, from a political point of view, there's every reason in the world to try to not talk about this, form a committee, and kick it downstream.
Incredibly, in 2010, declassified South African documents revealed nuclear discussions with Israel in the years leading up to the Vela incident. Could the space dust explanation just be a cover-up?
There are conspiracy theorists who keep these things alive despite the fact that they were pretty much settled by people who understood the arguments at the time.
In the end, we're left with a mystery. Was the Vela incident proof of a secret nuclear weapons test? Or was it merely some space dust that nearly took the world to the brink of disaster? Weird. Or what? So there we have it. Stories of mysterious freaks of nature from all over the world. On the east coast of Canada, an earth-shattering boom stuns a community and leaves scientists scratching their heads. On Lake Michigan, a mysterious fog terrorizes a sailor and alters the very fabric of time. And over the Indian Ocean, a blinding double flash of light creates a nuclear crisis. Are these stories evidence of mysterious forces at work within the world? Do we dismiss those who claim they are true? You decide. Have you ever seen a ghost? Over 90 million North Americans claim to have done just that, and 40 million others say they have physically experienced a paranormal event. Many of these events are easily explained, but some are not only weird and inexplicable, most disturbing of all, they seem to be evidence of pure evil. Do ghosts exist? And what are they anyway? Is the paranormal something we should fear? Or is it simply, hogwash? August 8th, 1989. Barry Taff, one of the world's leading paranormal investigators, responds to the call of a distressed woman in San Pedro, California. He brings along a colleague, photographer Jeff Wheatcraft.
After 5,000 cases, you go out expecting nothing to happen. And most of the time, that's exactly what does occur. Nothing.
The terrified woman is Jackie Hernandez, a single mother who claims that someone or something has turned her home into a living hell.
She reported apparitions of an old man, strange lights. Somebody tried to smother her a couple times. Things were flying at her. It was extraordinary.
But perhaps most chilling, on several occasions, Jackie claims to have seen a corpse in her son's bed. Intrigued, the ghost hunters decide to look around.
I have this attitude where I'm very skeptical because you know that a lot of people embellish and exaggerate and misrepresent what's going on.
But in Jackie's house, they find something unexpected and very weird.
We were taking pictures all over the house, and we saw this strange liquid, I don't know what, viscous liquid dripping out of a wall.
Unable to explain the weird slime, Taff is now convinced Jackie's not faking anything and real paranormal activity is occurring in her home. They take samples and promise to return, but just 3 days later, another call. This time, it's an emergency. Whatever is in Jackie's house is on a rampage. The physical attacks have become so violent and severe, she fears for her life.
I was unavailable because my father had a heart attack, so they were there without me.
Jackie reports the evil entity is now in her attic. It has been tormenting her with strange lights and ear-shattering banging. Jeff and Gary decide to investigate. Nothing could prepare them for what they find.
They hear, oh, like a yell or a moan, and Gary turned back to see what happened to Jeff, and he couldn't see. It was too dark in the attic.
Despite his terror, Gary snaps some photos in the darkness. What they reveal will haunt them forever.
You can see that Jeff, a 6'2" man, about 215 pounds, something has wrapped itself around his neck, and it's pulling him up against the rafter. And yet, there was no one there. It was Jeff and Gary. And he cut him down. He had a rope burn in his neck. It would have killed him. The question is, there was no one else there. So what? Try to kill him? How and why?
Something had tried to murder Jeff Wheatcraft. The investigators leave the house only to make another chilling discovery. The forensic lab report on the ooze from Jackie's walls is in.
The conclusion was it was human blood plasma. That's something you will lose sleep over, literally.
Jackie's story became known as the San Pedro haunting, one of the most mysterious paranormal events in history. But what really happened? Javier Ortega is a paranormal researcher. He has no doubt.
The Jackie Hernandez case is a very extreme case of a haunting. It's usually the spirit of a deceased person, a homeowner that passed away in that house, and they were so attached to a physical object or location that they come back. During the investigation of the Jackie Hernandez case, she reported that her and some friends were playing with the Ouija board, and they were able to talk with the spirit in the house. And the spirit had told them that he was a Marine that was murdered. So they went out and they did some research, and they found out that there was a Marine named Herman Hendrickson who was found dead in 1930. A lot of the things that were reported were apparitions, you know, whether it was a disembodied head floating in the attic or a corpse-like old man sitting in her child's bed. She also reported seeing strange lights. They were described as globs of luminous light. Free-floating globs of light have been reported in haunted places as well.
But for Ortega, the most compelling evidence of a haunting is that mysterious goo Barry and Jeff found oozing from Jackie's walls.
I mean, it just sounds so bizarre, you know, that you would have human blood plasma oozing from the walls. And when they checked, there wasn't any device that, you know, that was emitting this substance.
Was the Marine so angry about being murdered that he bled through Jackie's walls? Incredibly, Ortega thinks Jackie wasn't the only victim.
When Jackie Hernandez left the premise, people who inhabited that home have also reported strange activities. They reported objects being moved around, pots and pans being moved around, and they reported being touched.
What an incredible story. Yeah, well, I mean, strange things happen around my house, too, but once I say I'm sorry, everything's forgiven. But human blood? Dripping from walls and a spirit that is so angry it tries to kill you? I mean, who are they going to call? Ghostbusters? I've always wanted to say that. A terrified woman reports extreme paranormal events in her home. Weird lights, strange noises, even physical attacks. Did Jackie Hernandez live in a haunted house?
It does not appear that the house would fit the classic haunting.
Lloyd Auerbach is a paranormal investigator. He believes the answer isn't ghosts at all.
Knowing what I know about the Jackie Hernandez case, it seemed that she herself was a poltergeist agent.
Poltergeist? Isn't that just a hyperactive ghost? Or is there a difference?
What we learned in the last 100 years is that these things relate typically not to ghost sightings, not to hauntings per se, not to a place being haunted, but to a person, an individual in the situation who is typically stressed or otherwise put upon. There's possibly epileptic or having epileptic type activity. It's about a third, perhaps, of the cases. And the expression, instead of by an entity, is by the entity in the body. It's by a person's unconscious blowing off steam or having a seizure, essentially. It's kind of like a seizure in some of these people as well. But it's not a ghost-related situation.
Many now believe poltergeists are not ghosts, but a manifestation of something called psychokinesis.
We call it PK for short. And it's the idea that the mind can directly interact or affect matter and energy. We typically think of it in the paranormal world as affecting things outside your body, whether it be moving objects, what people often call telekinesis, or bending metal, or even healing.
Was Jackie Hernandez herself causing the weird phenomenon in her own house? If so, why? And for that matter, how?
Certain people, their unconscious minds let loose. I mean, we see people who are stressed out, who are put upon in society, in really expressing that stress in different ways. Some people get enraged and they break things. Some people shoot people. Some people keep it bottled up, and it can explode in kind of a different direction for certain individuals, which is a psychokinetic direction. And we call those situations where they're stressed. Think of it as an unconscious temper tantrum. It's happening outside themselves and just starts throwing things around, probably like they'd like to do if they actually physically could do it. But by having their unconscious throw things around, who's going to get blamed? The invisible force, the invisible ghost? Certainly not the person who's stressed out. When we talk about the stress involved in these PK events, which are often called poltergeist cases, we're not talking about typical stress of, just day-to-day stress, sitting in traffic, being frustrated because your computer couldn't work, which may actually be related back to the PK. Those kinds of stresses do show in small ways sometimes, but they can, again, come out in a lot of different ways. For example, road rage, or people just screaming at the driver across, the way without acting on it. You release that stress. People have other ways of doing it. In poltergeist cases, the stresses tend to be very psychologically oriented in most of these cases. So they can be related to deep-seated issues around the family or even around the working conditions. They are typically not expressed in other ways, so there's no outlet for most of these people.
Was Jackie's unconscious mind throwing a temper tantrum? And if so, why? It could be due to the fact she was experiencing emotional issues at the time following a difficult divorce.
There was enough going on in her life and, frankly, enough psychological issues that would indicate that she was responsible for most of the phenomena that was happening. In most poltergeist cases, people rarely ever think of themselves as the agent.
According to Auerbach, the most compelling argument that Jackie was both the victim and the problem is what happened when she moved 600 kilometers away. Incredibly, the vicious paranormal attacks on her continued.
In poltergeist cases, when people move, the phenomena follows them because it's coming from them. And that also happened in that particular case.
But if Jackie was her own poltergeist, how is it that the new tenants also reported paranormal attacks? Could it be that Jackie herself was responsible for the weird goings-on? Or were they the result of an altogether different kind of bad vibe? Professor John Huntington believes the Jackie Hernandez case can be explained by undetectable audio waves known as infrasound.
Sound is just the vibration in air pressure. That's how we perceive it. That's how it gets into your ear. Infrasound is below the range that we can hear as an audible sound, but we're still being affected by the sound wave is still impinging on our bodies. In fact, right now in the room, we have a pretty loud 19 hertz, 19 cycle per second infrasound wave going, but it's not really audible as a sound, and it's quite a bit louder than the speech, the level of the speech that I'm talking at right now. But it's still there, and it's still affecting us. It's still pressurizing the air that I'm breathing, that I'm speaking.
Human ears can't detect ultra-low frequencies. If it's below 20 hertz, you can't hear it. But other than our own bodies, what might cause these low frequencies?
Man-made sources of infrasound could be anything from a piece of air handling equipment in a building, anything like a train, a truck, anything that's big stuff that's moving could generate these very low frequency sounds.
Incredibly, Huntington believes low-frequency sound waves could have caused Jackie Hernandez's unpleasant experiences.
So in addition to things like headaches and nausea being caused by exposure to infrasound, there have been some reports of feeling a presence or some sort of hallucination or feeling like strange things are going on in the room. A lot of that was documented by two researchers at Coventry University, Tandy and Lawrence, in the late 90s. They were working in a space, sort of an underground space, as I understand it. And they had all kinds of just strange experiences. People would think that somebody was standing next to them, and when there wasn't anybody in the room, they'd be feeling alone and felt like there was a presence in the room, and there wasn't anybody else there. All kinds of strange experiences happening in this one space. And this would build up, of course, would build up anxiety, having these sort of constant sort of strange experiences. And then one of the researchers brought a fencing foil into the room to work on and clamped it into a vise, and it started moving on its own. And it was sort of flopping up and down at both ends where it wasn't secured in the vise. That led Tandy and Lawrence to research this, and they ended up doing some acoustical measurements in the room and found that a piece of air handling equipment was causing a very loud 19 cycle per second infrasound sound wave in the room. And in addition, the physical geometry of the space was causing that sound wave to build up in certain locations in the lab.
Can infrasound exposure mimic the experience of a haunting?
And infrasound could possibly cause something like a hallucination or an apparition or some other things like that based on the vibration of the sound wave actually affecting the eye. The eye itself could resonate or get a very strong sort of vibration, and that could cause blurring of vision or possible issues around the periphery of the vision. Those things coupled with already being in sort of a spooky location, being on edge by the infrasound, could certainly cause some sort of ghostly experiences.
Was Jackie's home haunted, or was she her own poltergeist? Whatever the answer, this story is certainly weird. Or what? A Connecticut housewife is tortured from within. Has she been possessed by an evil spirit?
Demons like to attack good people.
Many of us have experienced events that we would call paranormal, but in fact are just things that are harmless and easily explained. But what is the paranormal? And does it exist? Even the name is a little, well, weird and scary. Here's the way it's described in the dictionary. Paranormal, a claimed occurrence of an event without scientific explanation. As psychokinesis. Extrasensory perception of other purportedly supernatural phenomena. All right, guys, come on, that's it. You can fool some. Oh, boy, oh, boy. But some people experience paranormal events that are real. So real, in fact, they're deadly. Weird. Or what? History professor John Kerner studies reports of paranormal activity. None have haunted him more than the story of Patricia Redding.
By all accounts, she was a good person. I mean, there's nothing you can see in her past that would indicate why this happens to her.
In 1992, Patricia's life took a terrifying turn. Doing chores around her home in Litchfield, Connecticut, she suddenly hears a terrifying voice.
Worship Satan. She felt what she thought was an evil presence that was around her. There was nothing that could explain this.
Patricia tries to brush it off, but the eerie voice won't stop. Ever. Satan. It's the beginning of a horrifying ordeal.
Stop. The situation got much, much worse. Pet had a number of things that were happening to her that were very unusual. There were bite marks on the back of her neck, bruises on the back of her body, things she could not do by herself.
What could be inflicting Patricia's vicious bruises and other injuries? It's a frightening and bizarre mystery. Devastated and disturbed, she seeks help.
The family took Patricia Redding to the hospital, to local doctors. They ruled out all the conditions that could possibly be affecting her.
With no medical explanation, Patricia resorts to hoping her problems will simply go away.
But then things started getting much worse after that. She was knocked over horribly. She did not know what is happening.
Again and again, a seemingly evil presence hurls her into the wall.
These are things that never could happen to Pat Redding in a normal situation. She is not herself. She's becoming someone else.
Fearing for her safety, Patricia has only one place to turn.
At that point, the Catholic Church got involved.
Patricia's bishop takes her claims seriously. After an examination, he reaches an incredible conclusion.
They make the diagnosis, yes, she is possessed. Demons like to attack good people.
There's only one solution, an ancient ritual as old as the church itself. The bishop decides he will perform an exorcism.
He called upon the demon to reveal himself and say who you are, reveal yourself in the name of Jesus Christ. Almost every religion really believes in evil in some form or another. But the difference with the Catholic Church is that the Catholic Church believes evil is actually a physical manifestation in this world. It's not just a concept.
At first, the demon stays hidden, but not for long.
She was speaking in a language that she could not speak in normally, trying to insult the priest, insult his family, things that she never would have done on her own. These are pretty clear signs you're dealing with an evil entity inside the person's body.
Having forced the demon into the open, the real battle begins.
Things like holy objects, this often can anger the demon. These are tools in a war that can cause them to be so upset. The words of Christ makes them so angry. So it has to be said over and over again. It's a war of attrition.
The battle rages for hours. At long last, something breaks.
Demons, they get so upset, they just can't take this any longer, and they'll go somewhere else. They'll go bother somebody else.
The exhausting battle ends with the demons on the run. But before long, they're back.
Evil is real. It can affect someone in some horrible ways.
Sadly, Patricia runs out of time. After 16 exorcisms, in 2005 she dies of cancer, believed to be caused by her demons. Christopher Rossett is a psychologist. He says he knows exactly what happened to Patricia Redding.
Coming from a religious perspective, you might assume that this must be a demonic presence. But as a psychologist, my diagnosis would be dissociative identity disorder.
Better known as a split personality, dissociative identity disorder is when two or more personalities inhabit one mind. An abusive childhood can sometimes cause such a psychological break. One personality becomes the happy face, the person the world sees. The other deals with all the hidden pain, shame, and suffering.
The primary personality is unaware of the other personality. They may hear voices and have these sort of signs, but they don't know what it's about.
Can psychology explain the power of an exorcism?
After the exorcism, the individual experiences complete and sudden remission of their symptoms. And of course, that's considered proof positive that the demon has been removed. An alternative way of looking at that, however, is that the prayer, the ritual is in fact just served to rearrange these separate identities such that they have receded from the host's awareness. They don't hear the voice anymore. Then what I experience happening with some patients is that maybe weeks or months later, the voices come back. Everything I'm saying here is in no way meant to malign the value of religious, spiritual care. But there are some psychological ways of understanding these experiences that really should be taken into account.
Demonic possession. Ordinary people suddenly possessed by nasty entities. Ring a bell? Ah, you know, I've seen all the movies, Omen 1, 2, 3, The Exorcist, a lot. And guess what? Not only do they not scare me, but I don't believe them. I mean, just because it gets a little stormy doesn't mean the devil is on his way to take over your soul, does it? Yeah, as for all that other ridiculous stuff like twisting heads, speaking in strange tongues. Is demonic possession all in our heads? Or is there a more frightening answer? Reverend Bob Larson is not your average man of God.
I am, among other things, an exorcist.
Larson has studied Patricia Redding's possession and is convinced it was real.
There are those who would like to have the public believe that demonic possession is rare. I can tell you, It's not rare. It'll make a cold chill go up your spine.
Are demons really all around us? Are they trying to take over the bodies of innocent humans?
The Bible teaches that when Satan was cast out of heaven, a third of the angels involved in that insurrection were cast out with him.
According to the book of Revelation, when Satan lost his war with God, he and his followers were banished to the spirit realm on earth.
Satan is now an invisible spirit being. Satan can't pull the trigger of a gun, but what Satan can do is invade human bodies, and those people then become the instruments of evil.
Larson believes demonic possession has a firm basis in Scripture. He's also certain that Patricia's condition wasn't a case of split personality.
I deal a lot with multiple personality disorder. I know the difference. When you see the demon have such utter hatred for God and religious objects such as the cross, that aversion means it's something more than psychosis. That's when you know they are possessed.
But there's one thing Larson believes is the ultimate proof of demonic presence.
In the Pat Reading case, she apparently spoke in another language. I've seen this happen thousands and thousands of times. I had a woman speak Chinese one time. I had a fascinating case where a strange language was being spoken and a college professor with a PhD in ancient Semitic languages. He said, I can come up and tell you exactly what the voice was saying. And he did. And the voice was speaking about its possession of the person and how it was determined to destroy them. Now, this was a PhD college professor who was giving testimony to it.
Could these foreign, even forgotten languages prove that Satan is carrying on an age-old war by invading the bodies of humans?
To the skeptics who may not believe in demonic possession, I say, travel with me and meet the thousands of people who have had exorcisms. When you see the smile and the glow on the person's face as they say to you, wow, I didn't know I could feel like this. Something is gone. That's why I do exorcisms.
I don't know about you, but stories of ghosts and the paranormal send shivers up my spine. But that's kind of fun, right? But do spirits or ghosts or whatever they are always have to be evil? Well, aren't there any friendly dead people out there? I hope so. But there's some people who not only enjoy having ghosts around, they can talk to them whenever they like. How? They've got the gift. In just about every way, Faye Jackson is an average teenage girl.
I like to shop and just hang out with my friends.
While Faye's life appears to be ordinary, in truth, she and her family are dealing with something so sensitive, they've chosen to conceal their appearance.
Although it has become part of everyday life for us, it is still at times frightening.
Faye's story began 3 years ago when she was 10.
I was sitting in my bedroom on my own. I could feel a man sitting next to me.
She could feel like an energy, like a presence next to her.
And I could just feel his breath in my ear and it was all warm.
And then she heard him whispering in her ear.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hear me?
Faye races to her mom.
Like the fear, it was like uncontrollable. It was unexplainable.
The child was absolutely terrified. And I was scared for her, to be honest.
When Lynn takes her daughter back to the room, the man is gone. But Faye is in no doubt as to what she's experienced.
I saw my first ghost.
Terrifyingly, Faye's encounter was just the beginning.
The spirits started regularly visiting me. They'd only come when I was on my own, and when they did, just random spirits would walk into my bedroom.
Faye is haunted by hundreds of ghosts. Sometimes she sees as many as 5 a night.
Sometimes they just want to show her how they died, which is a little bit grim at times, and she's only 13.
the ghosts begin getting bolder.
There was an instant when her bed was shook, which completely terrified me.
I just felt like I was being attacked. It was horrible. It felt really dangerous, and I felt like I was on my own.
That was when I knew we had to do something about it.
At her wit's end, Lynn seeks professional advice.
We got lots of help from local mediums who understood what was happening.
Far from seeing it as something frightening, the mediums tell them Faye's ability to see and connect with the dead is a gift, and a very rare one at that.
They taught Faye techniques that she could use to take more of a control over her gift and to see it as a gift, really.
With the help of psychic mediums, the support of her mother, and lots of hard work, Faye finally mastered her gift.
It's like I have two lives. Like, I live one life where I'm just a normal girl, and then at other times I can talk to spirits. So it's really quite exciting.
I see dead people. That's something else I've always wanted to say, but I can't because I don't. Well, not when I'm sober anyway. But incredibly, it may be because I'm an adult. You see, Faye isn't alone. Millions of other children see dead people too. How? Do they possess a special power, a sixth sense? And is it a gift or a curse? Weird. Or what? 13-year-old Faye Jackson claims she can see ghosts. Do children possess the gift? Who better to ask about children who see ghosts than Karen Good, author of Children Who See Ghosts?
To discover that children see ghosts and talk with ghosts, to me it was exciting.
After more than 25 years researching the special abilities of young minds, Good has reached an incredible conclusion.
Children are more predisposed to see ghosts than adults are, primarily because of their brain power. The sixth sense begins to develop in children between the ages of 18 months all the way up through 5 to 6 years. And the reason is because their brain is going through a tremendous growth spurt.
We've all heard of the sixth sense, but what is it? What does it do that your other five can't?
When I discuss with a parent, for example, what is the sixth sense? I explain it to a parent as being intuitive intelligence. Some people have a heightened intuition, particularly sensitive children. We call them sensitive because they may be sensitive to the feelings of someone who might be ill. Or a child, one child that I'm aware of used to tell me about, he would know a car accident when his mom was driving. He would get nauseated, and it always correlated for him with a nearby car accident. So I think that a sixth sense involves feeling and intuition, and it could involve heightened sensitivities.
But where does this sixth sense come from? Is it a gift only bestowed on some? Remarkably, Good believes it's an ability that's within us all.
The pineal gland is located within the brain, which actually regulates light within our body. I believe the pineal gland can be a doorway to the sixth sense.
But if we all have the ability to access our sixth sense, why do so few children maintain this power into adulthood?
As the hormones change, children go through brainwave shifts, mood shifts, and that's the time logic develops. And children may turn away from their intuition, their feelings. If children have not been encouraged in their imagination, in their conversations, and sixth sense development, it can shut down when cognition sets in.
Psychic Jack Rourke is an expert in parapsychology. Experience has taught him that a far more mundane explanation may be at work, or rather at home.
There is a phenomenon called parentizing, where in essence there's a bit of a role reversal, where a child can sometimes become the caretaker of the parent or become the mirror to the parent.
Rourke believes that through parentizing, children can be actively encouraged to say they see ghosts.
The more positive reinforcement a child gets from their parent, that they are special, that they are extra sensitive, that they have special empathic or intuitive abilities, the more the child then believes they're psychic. And I'll give you an example of how this is done. A child wakes up in the middle of the night from a horrible dream and is talking about ghosts, chasing them, things like this. You come in as the parent and say, no, you're wrong, that didn't happen. You lose the ability to comfort the child because they've been made wrong. Now, I go into the room, same scenario, and I say, oh, you saw a ghost, didn't you? Yes. This is how it's done.
But why would a child like Faye go along with the idea of seeing ghosts? What's in it for her?
The specialness of the child in these circumstances gives the child permission to commiserate with the parent. They become their emotional partner. They go to activities together. They may go to certain psychic functions, and this unique relationship becomes a reward to the child. And in order to maintain that closeness with their parent, they have to maintain the psychic identity. For the parent, this also gives them passive means to control the child. And also, what I've witnessed is a way to slow down their development and prolong their childhood. So this is an interesting thing, one of the things that we look at. Now, why per se a child might have a specific experience? It could be biological, it could be an environmental reason, it could just be an ordinary bad dream.
Can you hear me? Are children who see ghosts merely playing out a fantasy with the encouragement of their parents? Is there nothing special about them at all? Does the gift exist in children at all? Thousands of children across the globe claim they can see dead people. Do they have an extra special sense known as the gift? Paranormal investigator Joshua P. Warren believes there could be a medical explanation for this phenomenon.
A person like Faye may be capable of seeing ghosts because she has some physiological advantage in her eyeballs themselves.
Could Faye's eye have powers the rest of ours don't? Warren believes her secret may be that she sees light differently.
Right now, all the data that we have indicates ghosts are more visible in the infrared realm. Some of the best ghost images I've seen have been captured using infrared technology.
Could Faye be seeing ghosts that are all around us? Ghosts that most of us miss because we can't see infrared?
The average person can only see a relatively narrow band of light, from usually around green to red. Faye might be able to see a little bit more than the rest of us.
Scientists call the range of light the visible spectrum, although most of us know it as the colors of the rainbow. But what if Faye was somehow able to literally see what the rest of us can't?
In the human eye, there are two primary types of cells. You've got the rod cells and the cone cells. Rod cells are used for nighttime vision, but they can't see color. Then you have the cone cells, which respond very quickly, and they see color. If Faye has more of those rod or cone cells, especially the cones, that alone might allow her to see a broader range of colors and frequencies than the average person. Her eyes physiologically allow her to peer deeper into the infrared or ultraviolet realms.
Incredibly, Warren also believes the eye might not just explain Faye's story, but also why children on average report seeing more ghosts than adults.
As a person ages, the components of the eye become more and more dense. In extreme cases, they can become very cloudy and form a cataract. So the older you get, the less you're able to see when it comes to this band of frequencies. Children are not only able to see a wider range of frequencies, but they also should have an open mind and open awareness. They have not been structured so much yet into a belief system and into a task-driven day-to-day routine that gives us tunnel vision as adults. As children, they still have a wider awareness and perception of what's around them and the willingness to acknowledge honestly what they see.
Could Faye and other children like her really be able to see into the infrared world of ghosts? Does she have a sixth sense? Or is Faye just a needy kid who wanted her mother's attention and approval? We may never know.